Welcome to the Configure Price Quote Podcast. My name is Frank Sohn and I'm the founder of CPQ Consulting. This podcast is 100% focused on Configure Price Quote, also known as CPQ, and will provide you useful insights into this topic. My guest today is Kevin Geraghty from Xait CPQ, a company that offers a number of software products for sales teams in various industries. And Kevin is the head of the CPQ practice and managing director. Some of you may remember him being on the podcast before, and I'm very excited to have him back to tell us what's new at Xait CPQ, which acquired Blueprint CPQ roughly 2 years ago. Welcome back to the CPQ podcast, Kevin.
Hi, Frank. Always good to speak with you.
Very excited to have you back, Kevin. Let's start maybe. I think on the last podcast episode that we had, we talked about the acquisition of Blueprint CPQ by Xait. And that was now almost 2 years ago. I was just wondering, how have you personally adjusted to being an employee now?
Okay. Well, actually, Frank, it's exactly 2 years ago today.
Oh, wow.
So it's our 2-year anniversary. In answer to your question, though, technically, I guess I was an employee of Blueprint CPQ also. So maybe apart from going from being a major shareholder of a small company to a minority shareholder of a much larger company, I've not really noticed too much change other than having more colleagues to draw upon for help and maybe the occasional management presentation every now and again. That I would say is the main change.
Okay, so but what has changed from a product point of view? I think product probably has changed quite a bit since we talked, right?
Yes and no. I think the most notable change is our growth, actually, Frank. We've gone, I think we're just over 300% growth since the acquisition. And that has brought with it the associated sort of infrastructure changes that you would expect. So that expansion of support to enable that growth, that's been the biggest change. And there are a few things that we've done on the product side. And we continue to do. So we work very much on the efficiency, so making it more efficient for our customers to capture their rules and maintain their rules and calculations within the system. And not just our customers, but our partners also, so that everyone can be as self-sufficient as they choose to be. And then on the productivity side, it's a lot of activity around integration with our sister products and activity around web-based proposals. That's the big area for us.
Absolutely, and we will dig a little bit more into this later. But first, couple of more personal questions. When you look at the CPQ developments over the last 12 months, was there anything that has surprised you, anything that you didn't expect?
I'm not sure it's something that's necessarily surprised me, but it never ceases to amaze me, is the ever-increasing range of companies that identify themselves as CPQ. Not just the numbers, but certainly the range from the very, very simple. I'd expect the more complex ones to come into that CPQ category, but it's that growth at the lower end of the complexity spectrum, I guess, where people are choosing to badge themselves as CPQ, that has been the thing that always surprises me.
And what's for you personally the most interesting development in the CPQ space in the last 12 months?
Well, if I look internally at me, I would say there's two really. The first is the way that we are working with the other products in the Xait portfolio. That's where we are sort of creating, capturing and capitalizing on what we call commercial memory. That's digitizing business knowledge, business content, rules, calculations, that kind of thing. And where we're empowering our rules and calculation engine to be used in different circumstances. So that would be one. The second is the opportunity that this opens up for us to help companies sell more intelligently. So easing that complexity and utilizing this digitized knowledge for much, much greater productivity and efficiency. In particular, how we're leveraging AI and machine learning to take things to the next level. So, for example, we've just introduced a module that will read documents requiring a sales response and suggest automatically relevant content for the sales team to put into their proposals. That's really quite amazing to see it in action, actually.
Excellent. We will talk more about that in a minute. I have one other question for you before we go there, and that's really, what's the most exciting activity you have done in your spare time in the last year and a half?
Well, that's an easy one, Frank. It's traveling again, with the restrictions being lifted around COVID. So did a lot of traveling in Italy last year, and then the Greek islands this year. Last year as well. And went to Santorini without tourists, which was quite something. So there were none of the big cruise liners there, and the place was pretty much empty. And more recently visiting the US again, which is always great, but that was more business with a little bit of social thrown in.
Very nice and good to hear. So, but now let us switch gears a little bit and let's talk about Xait and the products and services that you offer for anyone who has not listened to this on one of the previous podcasts. Can you give us a short summary of what products and services you offer?
I guess I prefer to talk about what we do rather than the product names, Frank. They all go under the Xait banner, but the business issues we address, if you like, those are the areas that perhaps I'll answer that question with today. So we operate in the sales enablement space, or as it's increasingly called now, the revenue enablement space. Because it can be more embracing and perhaps a little more buyer-centric rather than sales-centric. In this area, many businesses are facing the same three challenges we find. So the first is that we see organizations needing to differentiate to beat their competitors. And that, in many cases, is leading them to become more complex in their products and their services. And there is also a pressure from their buyers to provide information faster. The second of the three is making the right information available to the right person or persons at the right time. And that is, we see, driving digital transformation. So transitioning from existing tools such as Excel or Microsoft Word and managing that whole change process is not easy for businesses. And then the third of the three is that we see businesses needing to react rapidly to changing market conditions, be they mergers and acquisitions as we've experienced, or be they wholesale shifts to the way that they go to market. And then if we apply those business challenges to what we call four pillars of what we do at Xait, around revenue enablement, the four things we do there is we ease complexity and friction around that sales process. And we help businesses to manage governance, compliance, and risk. Now, GRC is a big topic, but our expertise is around where that governance, that compliance, and that risk touches on the sales environment and the revenue enablement aspects, which is an area that perhaps has been overlooked, I guess, for many years. And then the last two is that we enable greater collaboration and productivity. So enabling salespeople and channel partners to collaborate with people within their business, across businesses, so that they can be more productive. So no longer is it one person producing a quote or a proposal. There could be a whole team of people that are needed on that. And also, as part of that collaboration, getting the customer involved sooner, so that the customer doesn't request some information and then sit waiting for something to come back. We can use that collaboration aspect to get touch points much sooner and more frequent to begin to replace some of those face-to-face meetings that are just not happening these days. The fourth is that we leverage the commercial memory and content. So capturing and digitizing everything as best we can so that we can just use that in a more agile way for salespeople's benefit.
Very interesting. When you do that, is that more focused historically on the oil and gas industry because that's where Xait's coming from, or you have more industries that you're focusing on now? Manufacturing, I guess, as well, as that was Blueprint's focus.
Yeah. Energy and renewables is great for large bids and tenders, and a lot of collaboration around customized content co-authoring of bids and tenders. That's a huge business for us. But CPQ is particularly strong in the manufacturing sector, which has always been its strong point, I guess. But interestingly, from a CPQ's perspective, we've seen an awful lot of growth in business services, particularly around tech services where they're needing to produce statements of works and this kind of thing.
Very cool. And the company sizes that you focus on, what is that these days?
We've changed and pivoted a little here from when we were Blueprint. As Xait, we now focus very much on the larger enterprise customers.
Got it. And the geographies that you focus on, it's worldwide, I guess, but is the focus still mostly in Europe, or has that changed?
Yeah, the users are all over the world. I think our fastest growing user base is it's either India or China at the moment. That's where we're seeing the most onboarding of new users. But in terms of customers, i.e. where the contracts are signed and the decisions made about these things, they're very squarely in two zones, in Europe, including the UK and the US.
Excellent. Then maybe tell us just in a couple of words, who's an ideal customer for Xait from your point of view?
From a CPQ's perspective, it's those companies that have project-centric sales, probably with a mix of products / equipment and services, but it could just be products or equipment or just services. But if they have both, that's a particular sweet spot for us. And the services side, we see more and more services getting tagged onto products and equipment sales. They may face particular challenges around complexity, a need for collaboration, perhaps across different functions and or organizations. They may have constraints around experienced or specialist resources that cause pinch points, all of which basically slows down the production of quotes or proposals. And typically, they're either struggling to get by with one or more Excel spreadsheets or using an old legacy system that's at its end of its practical life.
Got it. And how many people do you have right now, and in what office locations are they?
Yeah, well, we're now just over 100 people across the group, and they are located in Norway, Stavanger, which is our head office now. We've got a couple of offices in France, one in Paris and one in Nantes. And of course, in the UK, we've got the Cheltenham office, and we've now opened the London office as well. And then in the US, we've got offices in Boston, in Massachusetts. We've got an office as we come down the East Coast, just outside Washington, Virginia, Herndon, actually, in Virginia. And then we've got two offices in Texas, one in Houston and one in Austin.
Wow, that's quite a lot of offices. So very good growth. So that brings me then to my next question. That's about the partner network, right? So I guess you have a number of system integration partner developed since our last discussion, I guess, right? So, or you're still installing most of the solutions yourself?
No, we're very much focused on working with our partners, and our particular focus is on helping those specialist CPQ companies scale to support our growth in the US and in Europe. And so in terms of the number of partners, it's the same. They are just that bit bigger now, and their CPQ capabilities are that much greater.
And how hard is it right now anyway for you to find any knowledgeable CPQ resources? Is there any change over the last 6 months that you see?
Well, finding good, qualified or experienced CPQ people is tough. And we have seen, and I think we will see some changes here in the next few months. I think there might be some freeing up of that kind of resource in certain areas. We might see that happening. So the pool that we dip into might be a little bit bigger. But our general preference is to find smart people and likable people, actually, and then coach them in CPQ. And once we've got them and we've coached them, importantly, keep them happy so they want to stay and grow with us.
Next question that I had for you, Kevin, is what do your customers expect in regard to administering product configuration and pricing rules and potentially other rules that you have, like for workflows and so on? Do the use case get more complex from your point of view?
Yeah, they do. And they expect these often very, very complex situations to be administered with no code, click and tick type scenarios, if you like. And now that's not always practical to do. And for some of these more complex situations, we offer a graphical rules builder using Blockly by Google. I don't know if you come across that. Apparently a 5-year-old can use it, but we've not tested that claim yet. We've also noticed that some of the more complex aspects that we're finding are around the structure, which that's where our partners are able to specialize. So they've got and building vast experience in what structures might be appropriate for people. And then once they've built and designed those structures, then they coach the end users to build and maintain their own rules within that structure that's appropriate for their business.
Novo CPQ Consulting helps you with all CPQ related questions. For example, we help customers to find the best CPQ solution for their business, and we help customers analyze their current business process to determine if and where CPQ can help. Here it's important to point out that we are 100% independent and always look out for our customers first. This means for us also that we don't get paid by any CPQ vendor for providing them new customers or for any other services. We are focused on our customers and always provide the best available information to them. We also help system integrators to improve their services, and we offer the only CPQ industry subscription that provides monthly CPQ news and trends. We have many other services, so check it out today at novocpq.com. Send me an email to frank.sohn@novocpq.com to learn how we can help you with your CPQ questions, and keep us in mind when you look for 100% impartial CPQ advice. If and how does the current macroeconomic situation impact you right now?
Yeah, it's bound to. Yes, I don't like to talk about recession too much because there's always money around in recession and people are always spending things. It does, of course, make people more cautious when they're deciding to make big purchases, and they'll go through that and maybe take a little longer to make decisions. But there are other macro events that we see driving decisions around CPQ. So these are buzzwords that you'll come across. The Great Resignation, that has seen a need for businesses to digitize their corporate memory so that can be employed to automate aspects of the sales process. Then a lot of knowledge and experience has gone, and businesses are wise to that now. So that Great Resignation we see as a big driver for and a big wake-up call for businesses to digitize that knowledge. The circular economy, there's another one. There's a need there to look at advanced services. It's long been talked about the sort of X as a service, as we do with software, and applying that to products. We're not seeing too much of that yet, but we are seeing advanced services, and the definition of advanced service is becoming more and more complex, and that's a growth area that we're seeing. Yeah, and I suppose the other ones come into digital transformation and the realization around managing that governance, compliance, and risk, where sales teams need to fall into line around that cautiousness, particularly around margins, that kind of thing.
Then let me ask you a couple of questions, right? So concerning what you hear business requirements wise from your customers in regard to a couple of different topics that I have. And let's start with product configuration. What are the main business requirements you see these days from your customers regarding that?
Increasing complexity all the time. Even though they don't recognize they're necessarily complex, they are. And we're seeing the bundling interdependent services with products. And we're seeing that, as I said earlier, that growing need to configure services and generate statements of works faster.
Next one, pricing. What do customers ask you for concerning pricing?
Yeah, when we're asked about pricing, they tend to stick to we're not being asked for anything groundbreaking particularly. But when we delve under the covers and we introduce the kind of things that our software is able to do, that does introduce some interesting discussions. So, for example, factoring in risk into their prices. So there's a lot of companies that will assess a project based on the risk, whether they proceed or not. And what we're able to do is say, well, okay, let's put a factor to that risk and maybe also adjust prices. And you can see where AI and machine learning can begin to be used about recommending pricing options. Lots of great potential there. And that I think will continue to drive people asking us about those things rather than us introducing them to the conversation. Although machine learning, we do get asked about AI quite a bit, but the expectation of what customers think is possible now with what is actually practical now are two different things we're finding.
Excellent. Very interesting topic. And we could probably talk much more about each and every one of the answers. Since we want to keep it short, I keep going. Quoting, I think you have the Xait Porter product, right? So, and I guess there's also an integration over there. But what do customers ask you for about quoting?
There's a bit of a diversion here with our products. There's still a huge demand for PDF authoring, but increasingly we see a demand for web-based or browser-based outputs, sort of mini websites, if you like. So that, I think, is an interesting topic in itself. With PDFs, there's still lots of issues to be addressed there around the way that's presented, the managing of that content and the like.
Got it. So another topic which we've discussed before, right? Aftermarket capabilities. What do customers expect from you in regards to that?
Yeah. Aftermarket, I guess, used to be an afterthought for many customers. The money just rolled in. They sold something and the spares business just kept ticking over without needing to do too much. But with the advent of advanced services, it's a growing area for us. Also, IoT means that servicing can be more proactive, and that's fueling a growth in advanced services and extending the customer lifetime value. So where customers might typically have ceased or reduced their spares buying from the original manufacturer after 3 to 5 years, because companies can be more proactive, they're seeing that 3 to 5 year spares business increasing to sort of 10 years plus.
Okay, then the next one is an interesting topic, I know, for a lot of customers who are based on the Salesforce platform, right? So the billing and subscriptions. How much do your customers ask for these capabilities?
Yeah, I hear lots of people talking about this, and many seem to be of the opinion that it's easily addressed with one-size-fits-all type approach. And perhaps in some industries, such as telecoms, that will work rather nicely. But from the conversations and experience that we're having in the industries that we are working in, that's just not the case. It's often a complicated blend with the more traditional methods, often on the same quote.
And then let's talk a little bit about architecture, because you hear more companies talking about that lately, right? So with lately, I use that loosely, right? So that's for the last 1 or 2 years. But you hear more vendors talking about headless and microservice. I hear less customers talking about it. But when you talk about this right now, how often do your customers mention this? How important is this to them that you have this architecture in place?
Well, now you're starting to get technical on me, Frank. And whilst I know enough to be dangerous, I can hand on heart say that along with our CTO, you're perhaps the only other person that mentions those two things. Sure, I read about them in the press, but I don't think I've come across a customer yet that's mentioned either headless or microsites. What I can tell you is if you mean can we integrate with other systems and surface that in different parts of our solution with different requirements within their business, then yes, that's a constant need and one that we address all the time. But the specific use of those words, no, I don't come across it that frequently, if at all.
Got it. Fair enough. Then let's talk about one thing which has become important, right? Since the pandemic, that was the integration with e-commerce and digital platforms, websites, and so on. How often do you see demand for this from your customer base?
Yeah, quite a bit actually. I think it's the e-commerce side rocketed, or the demand for websites to do more and work harder over the COVID lockdowns has driven an awful lot of this. So for websites, we're increasingly being asked to help with e-commerce integrations where they're complex. Although we compete there with the e-commerce providers that try to simplify all the time, and they've gone for the lower hanging fruit, I guess. So I think there's a pent-up demand for more complex e-commerce sales. But an interesting spin-off from that is that we are, for complex products and services, we're seeing a demand for people wanting to use our CPQ rules engine and calculation engine on the capturing of leads rather than the fulfillment of an order or a quote.
And now a little bit a different question. How important are in general the online software review sites for you and Xait?
Well, reviews have always been vital, and we've worked hard at generating those. The challenge is getting the end users to leave those. So when we are working with a company, we might have one or two or a handful of people that we work with within that business, and their user base that is using our software is many hundreds of people and more at times using it. And the challenge is getting those guys that are physically using it to leave reviews. So we work tirelessly to encourage that type of feedback, good and bad, actually, because we want to hear direct of any poor experiences so that we can correct them.
And I have one question on this one, Kevin, because I see G2 is very popular in the US for sure, and it's also in Europe. But in Europe, it seems there are other places which are also pretty popular. What would you say from a European point of view? What are the most important review sites that you hear your customers mention?
Capterra.
And that's the only one, right? So that's then what you hear the most. Or are there other sites? Because I see some vendors investing regularly in 8 to 9 different software review sites. So just wondering, is just one or are there multiple?
Well, we get leads from other sources, but when I look at the stats each month, it's Capterra for us that leaps off the page, both in Europe and the US, actually. G2 crowds, we don't see so many in there, but then maybe that's sort of cause and effect because we put an awful lot of effort into Capterra.
And my last question is about the roadmap that you have for the next 12 months. Is there anything exciting that you can already share with us today?
Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot going on, and some of it I don't know if I announced it necessarily, but I mentioned it earlier in our discussion. So some of the big things that we're working on are the integration with our sister products, Xait Porter, Xait Proposal, Xait RFI, and although they can be considered as standalone products, we will see much more tight integration around the user experience of the needs that those products address. So that's one big thing for us. And I guess the other that I can share is around the AI, machine learning capability. So we have an AI component now that we are rolling out across the estate of our products. And the first of those will be on Xait Porter very shortly. And that's the one I mentioned earlier, where we're able to read documents that come in, and then based upon that, our machine learning will recommend content that might be the response to a particular request for information.
Wow, that sounds very exciting. I'm definitely looking forward to see that in action. Unfortunately, today we're coming to the end of this episode. Hence, my last question, as always, is what's a good way for interested listeners to contact you or your team in case they have any follow-up questions for you?
Yeah, well, our website is always there, xait.com, and it's spelled Xait and pronounced Xait as in exciting. So that's xait.com. That would be a general route. Anybody wanting to get in contact with me, LinkedIn, Kevin Geraghty, or email me direct on kevin.geraghty@xait.com.
Kevin, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for making time for the CPQ podcast today.
Likewise, always happy to do so, Frank.
I'd like to thank everyone for listening and hope you learned something interesting today. If you like the podcast, please go ahead and rate it on iTunes or share it with your friends and colleagues. In the meantime, you can find us online at www.novocpq.com. So long, everyone.